Thank you very much, Thomas. And firstly, let me just say how proud I always am when confronted with the incredible potential and talent of our interns. I've spoken, this is the third time I've spoken at a lunch for the ACS Foundation. I've got to say that every time John arranges for a number of our interns to do the hosting, and I've got to say every time my chest puffs out. I leave the day 4 or 5 centimetres taller, and I'm very, very proud of our interns. And I've got to say, John talked about the ACS Foundation and the number of scholarships and interns that have been there. More than a third of all of those interns and scholarships. So since 2005, for example, in IBM we've had 1,500 people just like Thomas who've come in and spent a portion of time, half a year or a year, as part of their development. And I can tell you that about 68% of those folks currently is our sort of hiring rate of people who actually return and work in a full-time capacity in the IBM company here in Australia and New Zealand. We're absolutely delighted with our relationship with ACS Foundation, and that's the primary reason why I'm really pleased to be the first of these industry topic lunches here in Melbourne. And again to you, Thomas. By the way, John told me that he did tell you that you had to refer to me as Mr. Stevens, and anyone in IBM will know that's pretty unusual, because whenever I'm confronted with that, I usually tell people that Mr. Stevens was my father, and I'm Andrew. So anyway, Thomas, thank you for your very, very kind introduction. Thank you also for this opportunity to talk about digital transformation. It's a pleasure to be here with Phil Riven, the two of us and our teams, Katie Burford, who's also here, and a number of IBMers. We set off on a journey about, a little bit over a year ago to actually put some facts together, some forecasts, some detail behind our belief at the time of the impact of the digital world economically, the impact of high-speed broadband, and how it would be. We had a belief that it would be fundamental, it would be transformational, and it would set us as a nation apart, and would set the early adopters and those with creativity and leadership would set them apart. But we wanted to prove that, and with IBIS World's help, we did exactly that, and we launched that report that John Ridge talked about in June last year. And I must say, even today in the Australian, in that section in relation to the industrial internet, that today the whole thing about broadband and the impact, even in the News Corporation press, is regarded as beyond the tipping point now, and at the CEO and chairman level everybody is now a believer in broadband and its impact. So what I wanted to do today is admittedly, I realise I'm amongst the converted here, and I wanted to just talk about what we've termed the digital decision point. Because the other thing that's in this data, that if we look at it today in the Australian, I don't know how many of you saw it, what is exactly what I'm talking about is there was a survey of a number of CEOs, and one of the questions was on distribution systems. Transformation of these systems is having a profound influence on supply chains. How well prepared is your business? How well prepared is your business for the transformation that will come through the digital broadband-enabled world? Believe it or not, 11%, which I think is probably marginally overstated in my view, 11% said very well prepared. I think that might be what I think I'm absolutely confident is tremendously overstated is 52% said we're well enough prepared. We're well enough prepared. My personal view is, on average, we are not well enough prepared, and that's why I want to talk about this digital decision point, because I'm worried that companies that think they're well enough prepared, CEOs, chairs, board members, senior leaders in businesses who think they're well enough prepared, are going to end up where businesses are today, who are playing very, very rapid catch-up, and you know what, only a percentage of those businesses are going to survive. while the economic outlook of the digital economy, economically transformed, broadband-enabled world is enormously positive for the Australian nation. At the enterprise level, it's going to be quite different. It's going to be varied. And those who move, and move early, and move with effect, are going to be the winners, and those who don't, those I'm worried are the ones who say, I'm well enough prepared, are going to be left behind. And I've got a couple of examples of those where right back in the 90s, business leaders saw what might be happening, but thought either they were well enough prepared or, you know what, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It won't happen to us. And so I'll give you those examples. So let's firstly just have a look here. If there's one thing I'd just like, the message is the time is now to get serious about digital transformation of the enterprise. The digital economy will be built digital enterprise by digital enterprise, and it's time for more action at the enterprise level. If there's one thing you take away, please take that one. If I have a look here at, clicker. All right, how about if I do that? There we go. I won't use the clicker, I'll use the old-fashioned method. What do I mean by digital transformation as a first thought? This is this tectonic shift brought about by new technologies that affect every business, every industry sector and every component of government. These trends are reshaping business models, and I'm going to talk about the three potential paths to reshaping business models. And as I intimated earlier, they may well make a number of business models completely obsolete, completely uncompetitive, and therefore to hang on to those business models will be a road to disaster for those businesses at the enterprise level. This digital transformation will encourage you to collaborate more closely with customers and every facet of your business. In fact, if you look almost at every example in every industry you can find, there are non-traditional competitors who are existing and flourishing, and they are attacking the traditional competitors from the customer end. They're nimble, they're using mobility, they're using social business, they're using analytics, and they're eating alive, one nibble at a time, the established competitors and established businesses in many, many examples. They are coming at it from the customer facet of the business. They're also creating new products and services and find value in very, very unexpected places. And so the response can be to blend all the channels, face-to-face, electronic, direct, indirect, into a continuum that offers a seamless customer experience. Digital transformation is this, and it's going to touch every single person in this room if it hasn't already. It'll affect your employees, it'll affect your business partners, and it'll affect every single customer that you have. The research that we did with Phil and IBIS World showed that all but 15 of the 509 industry classes that make up the Australian economy will be positively impacted by the arrival of this transformative new utility called high-speed broadband. This ubiquitous, available high-speed broadband is at a utility status, and as Phil has educated us, every single age of economic growth and activity, with the exception of the hunting and trapping age, was associated with a highly available and highly effective utility. High-speed broadband is that utility of this coming and the most significant economic growth period that the world and the world economy has ever known. It's a utility the likes of which the world has never seen. It has some parallels like the traditional utilities like water and gas and electricity, but it'll be far greater in its economic impact. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited by these trends, and if you want to just see some data, and again, I'm quite aware that I'm in a room of the converted, if you can see some of the statistics here, last year 6% of all retail sales online worth over nearly $13 billion were in the Australian economy. 4.5 million apps downloaded, I think, in June last year. In the same month, 2 million Australians went online at a Wi-Fi hotspot, and already these numbers would be blown away. It took 4 years for 13% of the US population to sign up for dial-up broadband. 4 years. Just have a look at the sort of rates of impact that all of these technologies, many of them.
Okay, right.
If you look at another example, Ericsson estimated that worldwide mobile data traffic was 700 petabytes a month in the first quarter of last year. That's more than 10 times the figure the year before. So that's 10 times increase in 1 year. And just to tell you what that is, right, in 1 quarter, if you took all the written works of every language since the dawn of recorded history, it would be a little more than 7% of the data that mobile users sent in that 1 month last year. Every single written work, every language since the dawn of recorded history, that was 7% of the mobile traffic that data mobile users did in that 1 month. Telstra and Optus have turned on powerful 4G LTE networks. The national broadband network is coming and signing up customers at high rates of speed, at very high adoption rates. I don't know whatever people are, we're being told the adoption rates are low. If you compare it to any other technology adoption, the rate is higher, and I have no doubt that it will continue. My only view, just to put the cards on the table on the broadband picture, is we need it faster, and we need it faster. That's it. We need it sooner, and we need it to be as fast as possible, because the business possibilities and the value possibilities at every aspect of our economy will be enhanced by speed and availability. There's a lot of smaller innovations that are happening as part of this world. If you look at the digital wallet, you know, if you've flown Qantas domestically recently, you may have skipped the line at check-in, used your smartphone, and you can print your tickets. That's been around for a number of years. But now people with iPhones and iOS 6 can show their boarding passes on with their phone using Passbook and a number of other available technologies, and you can see where this is all really heading. You know, you don't need cash in your wallet. Soon you won't even need plastic, because everything will be on that stored device, which will be that smartphone. And we've only got to look as far as the emerging ICT world in Africa to see that the primary banking medium, the primary stored value medium, the primary identity that every African person will have will be their phone. It will not be an address, it will not be a bank account, it will be a phone account, and we already see the early movers in Africa moving that way. This, as you can sense from my reaction, is an established trend, and it will go. Most of you will be familiar with the phrase carpe diem, meaning seize the day. And I think that's the sort of message here is we've got to make sure that the businesses that we're in are seizing the day. In our own case, we're working to seize the cloud opportunity, and you know what? It is quite different to anything that we've done in the IBM company in our history. But you know, we've been through 8 significant innovation waves as a company, and we're in the middle of the 9th. And we will make that change, but it's affecting us, it's affecting you. The key is don't waste time. This is the time and the year, in fact the month, in fact, to harness the impact that this digital transformation can have on all of these businesses. If we look, I just said to Phil just over lunch, you know, if you look at who are the real leaders in the digital transformation space, the thing that is common with them is they started earlier. They started earlier. And while there's been an impression that's been created that they're brilliant and they're smart, and some of them are, they started earlier. And so given that there's a lot of businesses that haven't started seriously yet, despite the fact they say, their CEOs say they're well enough prepared, there's still time. So get yourself into that leading position and seize the day is the real message. If we have a look at this chart, this is one that we put together, our team and Phil Riven's team at IBIS World. And we tried to look at, you can see the vertical axis there is the significance of the transformational benefit. And I know Faith's here from Deloitte. They did short fuse, big bang. Very similar type piece of work. It's slightly different, but it says the same story. There's going to be a massive impact, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than any of us think. Except me, perhaps. Except Andrew Roger, perhaps. Except a few, Stephen Conroy, perhaps. except Phil Riven perhaps. But the key is it's going to be very significant. And if you have a look here, we can see now where the transformation, information, media and telecommunications, e.g. what was the newspaper industry, retail trade, arts and education. One of the things we're doing at the, Thomas mentioned my role on the board of the Australian Chamber Orchestra. We're developing a virtual orchestra where people will be able to interact on a basis, not only in a performance space, but actually online, where we can extend the Australian Chamber Orchestra experience to our community of people, in fact, right around the world. And again, arts and recreation are right up at this thing where if you're not well advanced by now, you're in real trouble. You're in real trouble. Amazing stories out of the US in terms of orchestras and others who have changed the way their people, their subscriber base, their supporters interact with the orchestra. If we look at the Australian Open story here in Melbourne, then again, if you look at australianopen.org and you look at the online presence, year-to-year increase of 113% in mobile access, mostly by people at Melbourne Park experiencing the tennis that day. It's fundamentally enriched the experience, not to mention the nearly 16 million discrete users around the world who also were accessing scores and other things. So this is the sort of timescale. If you have a look up the top there, professional, scientific and technical services, healthcare, education and training, government, public, which is public administration and safety. All transformational in the positive impact that it'll have on those sectors, high-speed broadband and digital transformation. Why is government, public administration and safety recognising that why is it in that 2018 and beyond? Scale. Scale. The magnitude of public administration and safety, so defence, policing, everything that is done in state, federal and local government stands to be the most significant economic contributor to this nation. And I've got to say, in a time when we need fiscal constraint and we need to find ways to spend less, I don't think there's a better opportunity for us in public administration and safety. There is not a better one. We shouldn't be trying to manage down, you'd expect me to say this, we shouldn't be managing down the IT budgets. We should be looking at how IT budgets should be increased to reduce the overall, change the business model, improve the customer access and reduce the overall budget expenditure level and in many departments. It will be massive. It was the #1 industry sector in the study in terms of economic impact. And you know what, there is a little bit more time, but you know what, we need to start now. Education, healthcare, professional, scientific and technical. Anyone that's in professional services, scientific or technical services will know exactly what I mean. If you're not well on the way this year, you won't make that competitive hurdle by 2015, is the point. And you're going to have a look, find your own industry, transport, postal, warehousing, utilities, manufacturing, wholesale trade, etc. Rental, hiring and real estate. You know, I mean, look at that. We're talking on our table about or actually earlier today I was talking to someone, who's going to win the recruitment business? Is it going to be Seek.com or will it be LinkedIn? You look at the impact of how recruitment has changed fundamentally over the years. So this is something that's established and the fuse is fizzing. It's on. The leaders today started earlier. Some of them are brilliant, but mostly they started earlier and they're on the path. That's the key. What are you doing in your business? Are you well enough prepared? Or are you really saying we're probably behind? And I've got, again, as I said, a couple of examples. When it comes to digital transformation, there are three pathways that we see. The Institute for Business Value that is established within the IBM company and within IBM Global Services. My colleague Steve Bingham's here, where is he? There he is, Steve, who runs Global Services. Global Business Services here in Australia, did this piece of work and they looked at the pathways that companies that are undertaking a digital transformation. So at the enterprise level, how do I transform? What are the pathways? #1 is the first. Note they all converge there at transformation. They're all actually heading the same way. Path 1, you'll see, it looks at the reshaping the operating model in terms of how we deliver our products and services. And most businesses who are transforming are on this path. They're on that path. They're changing how they operate. Right? The other dimension, which is path 2, changes the what we deliver. And often businesses get to the point that once they change their how, their what becomes transformed merely because the way they used to charge for their service in many ways used to be about delivery. And anyone here who's old enough to remember how the stockbroking industry used to work, it was a closed shop. You had to be a member of the stock market to be able to place trades, and you had to phone up your broker, and the broker would charge you to place the transaction for you. And as we know, that is somewhere between $10.95 today and some proportion, a low proportion of the trade value. So the broking industry, once they changed the access method, the how, were fundamentally in a position that they said, well, what is the value we're actually charging for people now? Because this has become a very, very low price, and found themselves on that second, on the horizontal dimension very quickly. And really, they've, as anyone who's in or had any experience in that industry would know, is it's very difficult to charge people for advice. It's very different. And so we have a funds management business today that's much bigger, and it has grown proportionally as the broking business has declined. That's 2 examples of those 2 vectors. First one, though, is most people say we're going to change the delivery mechanism. So that point, 53% of companies that say we're well enough advanced in the transformation of how we are delivering distributing our products and services, our supply chain and everything. I've got to say, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It's a concern for us and the economic trajectory that we need to be on as a nation, that we've got people that are obviously in the big end of town have got a somewhat of a blind spot, I'd say, in relation to how big the task is and how far they should be along. So that's the first path. If we have a look at automation in the supply chain, omnichannel retail, an example we've got here is David Jones is one of our clients, and DJ's has been on a digital transformation trajectory for more than a year, spurred on by, not surprisingly, sluggish growth earlier this century in the bricks and mortar business, and quite frankly, losing a number of customers to online retailers, whether they were local or, in the early days, international. DJ's is using new omnichannel technology to fuse digital experiences, offering 90,000 items online through mobile devices, and about a month or so ago extended that with an updated iPad app with a new web shop front, so that you can now shop in-store, you can shop online, or you can shop on the go. It's a place to browse, recommend, ultimately buy, and you can buy directly from the catalogue with one click. And also they're using, and quite advanced in using, social media basically to build a community feel, and also to process and develop and implement campaigns. They invite customers to cosy up to them and share their selections with friends. Also provide unique insights through the data analytics that they can draw from this around customers' habits, tastes and intentions, that is now informing their buying decisions. So the judgment work and the analysis of what happened in another market in the Northern Hemisphere is being balanced now with a quantitative approach in terms of what's buying, what is selling, what should be bought, and how should it be priced. This all has the potential to take DJs to a whole different space. In fact, some of the other names in the retail sector are wondering how David Jones, the grandfather of retail, they describe it, David Jones as, 175 years old this year, the oldest single brand name department store in the world. The question is, how is it that the grandpa of retail overtook us all in 6 months? That's the question that's being asked, and that's the question, well, that's the fact that is fueling Paul Zara's enthusiasm and his continued investment in his omnichannel path. The second one about what you sell, the second path, which was starting and heading across the horizontal, there are some companies that look at that and change significantly, and what happens is the value added becomes the value in itself in many cases. The value added in the old model becomes the value, the only value actually in itself. And there's many examples. The broker example I gave you is a good one. If we also have a look here, this one, the music industry is another really good example. And again, under Chatham House rules, not to be quoted, Len, please, in your highly syndicated report. But a music industry executive said to me in 1998 when I said to him, this is going to fundamentally change your business. This is going to go online and it's all going to be different. And he said, no, Andrew, you've got it all wrong. People will always prefer the face-to-face entertainment value of face-to-face bricks and mortar retail. They'll always prefer, this will be a small percentage, right? These are the sort of people that are saying, we will only do in retail 1-2% of our turnover online, and we know that last year 6%, this is from those NAB statistics online, 6% already, and I'll bet you that's north of 10 in 2013, and most of it is domestic. So all of that stuff is happening. If we look at what happened in the music industry, the file swapping, which was the first early stages of the digitisation of the industry, Napster, if you remember, and the music industry ganged up and said, we need to take action against Napster, we need to shut them down, they're terrible. Could you imagine a scenario if we replayed the tape and we say that the music industry said, right, stop that, we're going to merge with you, and together we're going to transform the music business and we're going to digitise the music business, right? Where would iTunes be in that world? They wouldn't, I doubt they would be anywhere near as prominent if they exist at all, because the music industry would have protected its own franchise, and I just wonder whether they thought that they were well enough prepared. Were they well enough prepared? I asked the CEO of one of the two big media companies, it was in private so I won't share which one, and I asked him, when did you first work out what was going to happen to the newspaper business with this online and digital thing? When did you work it out? He said, Andrew, it was 1997. And I was in Silicon Valley and these smart people showed me what the internet could do and what it would do to the media and to the newspaper business. And I only kick myself now because if only I'd started then. If only I started then. And you know what? I guess he thought he was well enough prepared. I think we're well enough prepared. We're okay. I don't think well enough prepared. Anyone who's in that category, I think, is in trouble. The people who say we're very well prepared because we've done a really detailed piece of work on this, I think they'll be successful. My guess is they're well advanced. They're in it. They're well enough prepared. Yeah, we're okay. Yeah, it's only going to be a few percent anyway. I'm not really convinced. Another CEO in retail, not Paul Zara, said, you know what, I don't really believe it. I've got to be seen to have a strategy, but I don't really believe it's not going to happen. It's only going to be a few percent. You know, this is alarming. It's alarming to me. So if we go on, and let's have a look at Fairfax, for example, but I was out at News yesterday, same thing, and slightly different approaches they're taking, but they're well advanced. Fairfax is probably, of the two, I think, is a bit further advanced today in reinventing itself and inside out for digital, and it's quite an amazing thing. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, there's 9 million Australians who read Fairfax's stuff in some form. 9 million. Only 1 million are paying a subscription. So what do? Do we put the paywall up and alienate the 8 million? Or do we find a business model that says, let's leverage the news content with rsvp.com, with Domain, with Stays, with Cars, Cars Guide, I think it is. Cars Guide is theirs. What's the model and how can we transform the ecosystem to do it and monetise all 9 of those in terms of providing a different experience? That's the sort of model that Fairfax is on with. You know, 75% of the readers of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age today come from the web, tablets and phones, 75%. And so they've made a very, very good move in transforming the way they deliver, which is that first path. They're now on the path of transforming the value that they provide. If you think about it, rsvp.com, your relationship, Cars Guide, your car purchase, and Domain, which is the other one, your house. Three really big decisions that any of us make in our lives: our relationship, our house, and our car. And Fairfax have got properties in marketplaces, as they call them, in those three, plus a few ancillary. The question is, what will they make of it? Same if you go to News Corporation, what will they make of it? I bet you both of them wish they'd started earlier. I know one of them does. It's core business. If you think about what those businesses used to be, they were publishers of classified ads. And the value was that we'd get your classified ads in front of more people. And so what did they measure? Circulation. They measured how many newspapers were out there, and that's why they give you a freebie at the footy, because they want to make sure that the circulation numbers are up there for advertisers. But you know what? There's plenty of options, as Google has found, about how people advertise things. Plenty of options. So the nature of the value itself has changed, and it's been forced on them by the change in the delivery method, because there's non-traditional competitors coming from the customer end. Exactly what we said. If we have a look at path 3 then, which is up the middle, this is the bold play, and this is the play that the new entrant traditionally follows. So shoes of prey, bird's nest, and one I'll talk about, which is Kogan. Anybody knows Kogan would know that Ruslan Kogan is a disruptive, and I said this, I think you quoted this, didn't you, Len? Somebody, I think you did. A disruptive leader in a disruptive business. And he is aggressive. His CV tells you that he has booked a flight on the first Virgin flight to space, right? That's the sort of guy we're dealing with, Ruslan. He's very aggressive, he's very disruptive, and he's actually a lot of fun. We had him, I was on a panel with him, and he thought there were going to be suits there, so he wore a T-shirt with a tie on it. He wasn't going to wear that. He is a very, very interesting guy, and he's gone that path up the middle and said, I'm going to reinvent the how and the what in what we're doing. And by the way, that is the shortest path, because there's no legacy, there's nothing to reinvent. He's really heading up there. They're really a product of the digital age. They're buying, they're sourcing, everything about it, their delivery methods, their customer analytics are all fundamentally different to any of the shopfront rivals. It sells physical products like TVs and cameras. They make very heavy use of digital technologies at every step of the business. Their analytics, if you ever get a chance to talk to Ruslan and just get him to run you through how they use analytics, of what they know, what people look at every part of the experience, on every way they access, I can tell you it's tremendous. They launched their own Android smartphone last year for $149. And while they are the product, in fact, they're a showcase of the digital era. They don't play on that. Their business proposition is the world's best products at the world's best prices. And he's got a business model that enables him to make that claim. And he's highly successful. Highly successful. If you compare his turnover statistics with those of other established bricks and mortar retailers who are in similar type of categories, who say it's never going to happen, it's only going to be a few percent, he is already a 60-person business with a very charismatic leader, is doing a multiple of some of the really, really big names on a like-for-like basis in there, because he doesn't know anything else. He's taken path 3 and going right up through the middle. It's not just about discounting to drive sales volumes. Is customer analytics and the intimacy of the customers are really something. Marketing, operations, the product development, the sourcing, amazing. In our country, of 11.7 million Facebook users, I'm sure that's, as soon as you put any figure down, it's out of date. 3.5% of them have liked Kogan's e-commerce site. 3.5% of them. 3.5%, or nearly 400,000 people have said, we like Kogan's online site. So how does he drive those turnover? How does he do it? He's got good products, he's got very good analytics, and he knows exactly, if you've been on that site, what you're looking at, and if you didn't buy, why you didn't. They have a hypothesis and a degree of confidence on any of that. The entire operation was born digital. Like Shoes of Prey, like Bird's Nest actually wasn't born digital, but it expanded digital, and all of these upstart, new entrant businesses are showing many established businesses the way. And that question is, my worry is, are those established businesses thinking they're well enough prepared? That's the worry. So there's no time to waste is the point. These are all interesting examples. You, I'm sure, will see many of them in companies you're interacting with and hopefully companies that you're working in. We need to take a step back and have a look at this digital transformation in terms of the economy. Because if we have a look at what it means for this nation, there's Kogan. If we have a look at this nation, we've got a decision point. You can see there which of those paths will we take in terms of GDP per capita. Productivity and competitiveness, I think, is at the heart of all of this. And while we've talked about today about leadership and about digital transformation, and the time is now on the digital decision point, as a nation we face that choice, and it's actually a choice. Are we actually going to continue on, particularly as the mining and resources boom loses some of its lustre? How are we going to go, and what will fill its place? What will make us competitive so we can remain a high income, high standard of living nation? How will we become effective, competitive and highly productive, recognising that the last era of real productivity growth, according to the Reserve Bank, was the 1990s. And it coincides absolutely perfectly with the ERP era. When companies optimise their enterprise resources through the application of software to produce a vastly more productive outcome for their business, right? That was the last one. Ever since then, our productivity growth rate has been declining and has even become negative in multi-factor productivity. So which is the path we're going to choose, and how well prepared are we really to take that journey? You can tell where I'm coming from, and you can tell where our colleagues, those of us who are here from IBM, we are over the horizon in terms of convinced on this path. If we have a look here, do we want to have steady GDP per capita increase through productivity and competitiveness? Or are we going to take that red path? And we're going to say, you know what, no, it's a bit too hard and we will rely on resources. We won't be like Korea, like Israel, like Switzerland, who are some of the most productive and also in terms of technology adoption, very, very high countries and very, very innovative with it. What's the path that we choose and where will we do it? I think it's clear to me that making the proper use of broadband to change how we do business and the nature, the what, in what we do in our business is going to be a very, very important path. And it means that the public sector, which has a significant component of GDP, has the opportunity to transform what it is doing to be a very, very strong case in point. And I think it is a big part of a solution to our fiscal challenge in this nation. At the heart of it all, folks, it's about new business models. So we are delighted to see that the federal government has put the issues I'm speaking about on the table in the recent Innovation and Industry Statement. This statement acknowledges the impact of the high dollar. It makes us a very, very expensive country internationally in the short term. And it also puts the spotlight on our stagnating and now declining productivity level over the last decade. McKinsey did a study and forecast that if the mining boom slowed and we did not improve our productivity growth, then our income could drop by half of a point, just if in a slowing of the mining boom itself. Our growth rate would drop, and we know that we haven't got a lot of growth to actually drop, is the point. Conversely, McKinsey also found that if the national income could be $90 billion a year higher by 2015, if our productivity growth was returned to the long-term average rate, and people would have seen Phil Riven's articles in BRW and others, he said exactly the same thing. If we could get back onto that long-term curve, then the impact on this nation would be enormous. This digital transformation is a big component of getting us back on that long-term rate. It's a big component, but we do have to start now. If we have a look, Phil, this will bring a tear to your eye. This was Phil's chart about the changing composition of the Australian economy going back to when Phil was born in 1800. He's kept these records himself. And you can see the red bit. See the red bit at the top there? Agriculture. Agriculture. And have a look. The pink bit, highly important, but that's the mining industry, the pink bit. So if you have a look at 2020 or 2000, it's about 8%, and it's very, very important, but it's 8%. Have a look at the orange, yellow, the green, and the growth in that light blue section down there in hospitality, health. But have a look at the services industry. This nation is a nation that is very significantly about knowledge. We're good problem solvers. That's why we have a highly vibrant, highly successful services business. And really, this to me is the encouraging sign. This, going back to the choice we have to make and the journey and the transformation we have to take, this to me is the encouragement. Because if you look, this is IBIS World's prediction of where we'll be in 2050. Agriculture will be about the same as it is today. Mining will be about half the significance of the in the economic terms of the Australian economy as it is today. And you can see down there in that tertiary sector and the quaternary sector, Phil, media, finance, rental hiring, real estate, dwelling ownership, professional technical services, admin services, public administration and safety, etc., education, right? Remember all those ones at the top of the impact curve, transformational impact and significant impact. It's all those ones, and that's what our economy will become if we grasp the nettle. If we grasp the nettle. If we don't, the connected world and the tradability of services is going to mean that other countries to the north of us who are not going to respect business models and history, they're going to unravel those industries very, very swiftly. They're going to unravel them. They're going to compete because they will be more competitive, they will be more aggressive, their business models be more powerful, and we will be left behind as a nation. That's the red path. So if we go then to Carpe Diem, back there, seize the day. But the second part of this is, let me just read it out to you, what it says in the Latin. It says, Carpe diem quam minimum credula postero, which means seize the day, putting as little trust as possible in the next day. The reality is every opportunity has an equal and opposite threat. And if we don't seize the day and we don't make today our digital decision point and get on with it, I'm worried that we won't have that 2050 prediction out there. I think we will, because I think we're good enough problem solvers to work it out. But it's up to us as leaders in this industry to take our place in really making sure that people firstly see this opportunity and the threat, and most importantly, we take the actions that we need to transform our enterprises one at a time so that we build a really powerful digital economy and a very successful and highly prosperous nation as part of it. So, together, we stand ready to seize the day with you. I would encourage you, thank you for your support of ACS Foundation, but I would encourage you, please, lock arms with other people in the industry and let's make this transformation happen, and let's start yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, for that very interesting Andrew, okay.
Please.
Thank you, Andrew, for that very interesting presentation. If anyone has any questions regarding the presentation, can you please raise your hand, identify yourself and which organisation you are from. Yes. Yeah.
I can shout it out. Mark Toomey from Economics. Andrew, you've identified that too many organisations think that they are ready and they're not. Can you take that one step further readiness of organisations is created by the business leaders. What proportion of Australia's business leaders actually get it to the extent that they can drive their organisations into the 21st century?
The survey that I was quoting, the Australian have done, said that 11, these were leaders, CEOs, they said 11% said they're very well prepared, and I think that's probably close. I don't know how many really get it. I can tell you, though, that I would give you the generalisation that not enough. And for us to make the sort of transformation we need at the economy level, we need the big names to start doing the heavy lifting. Because, you know, while it's great to have Kogans and Shoes of Prey and Bird's Nest and all of these startups doing incredibly well, and retailers with their online businesses getting triple-digit growth rates in terms of their business, we need the heavy lifting to be done. Quite frankly, we need more like the financial services industry, particularly banking, who are well established on this trajectory. We need more of it. And I think that the reality, rather than this is how do I share in my entitled portion, that's why I'm starting to talk a bit about the threat as well as the opportunity, because we do need more people, and not enough people are saying, you know what, this really could happen to me, and I don't want it to happen on my watch. You know, it's not going to happen while I'm around. That's the thing. So I don't know the answer, but I just ask everybody, lock arms and let's do what we can to convince people the time is yesterday.
Andrew Chan, University of Ballarat. Maybe it's a suitable question for the ACS Foundation. And because of the rapid change, there's something very difficult for the university to train the graduates that prepare them for the coming few years. Because, for example, 3 years ago, iPad just came into being. But the thing is that it's so ubiquitous now. What is your view on how the university and the tertiary sector should support the change that is required in the industry and in the society as a whole?
It's a very good question, and part of our association with the University of Ballarat is to provide that balance to the university in terms of our vocational experience that we provide to a lot of earners you learn students and others, to try and provide the balance in the real world. My answer is maybe a bit different to what you'd expect. I don't think actually technology is the gap that we're missing. Quite the opposite. I think our technology availability is, as you say, moving fast, and I think the universities are doing a great job. Evidence, Mesut and Thomas and other interns that we have, they're doing a great job in preparing people for the technical aspects. What we've got to get attention on is the leadership gap and the perception that, you know what, we're well enough prepared. I don't think we are. And so I think that it's in other disciplines, not necessarily engineering and IT, where we've got to start to get this thing. Whoever's looking at business models, there. So it's in marketing, it's in strategy, it's in commerce, it's in others. But I think that's where the attention, that's where the gap is, you know. It's not in technology. There's plenty of technology and it's very, very effective. We just need to get it employed.
Hello, John Wilson's my name, from Monash University. I'm going to ride on Andrew's coattails and just take up that issue of rate of change, because I think the commonly held belief is that the internet isn't fast enough and that we don't have the right technology or the right applications to succeed. But I just put it to you that maybe it's a human factor. Maybe that we have a rate limiting step, which is in fact the rate of change. If a restaurant changes its menu more than twice a year, it'll start going out of business because people can't rely on the product. What's your view about the glass ceiling, which is actually the actual rate of change, and are we managing that well? Can we move fast enough because of the human factors?
Whatever the reason is, we're not moving fast enough. And it probably is human factors that were there. If we look at various benchmarks, I tell you what, someone told me the other day, they heard I'm sorry I can't remember who this was attributed to, but they said, you know what, as a nation we like to think of ourselves as punching above our weight. And their interpretation of that was, you know what, even though we're a middle-sized, small to middle-sized country, we actually do pretty well against our peers. We punch above our weight. Rather than saying, in the globally competitive world, how well are we punching against the best in the world? So rather than benchmarking ourselves whether it's human factors or anything else, against the rest. We have to benchmark ourselves against the best. And you look at it, World Economic Forum, something of particular interest of mine around innovation. World Economic Forum, INSEAD, OECD and others. You know what? Application of technology in this country, it's rated low, poor. It's rated poor, which I must say is embarrassing. To someone who's, in this industry, I think we should all be embarrassed by that. And it's multiple groups, OECD, the World Economic Forum. Our application of technology is poor. And one of the things I see is why I reference that Reserve Bank point, is this link to productivity is so strong that I think that's why, ask Phil, he'll tell you why it's so tightly coiled. The infotronics era, he even called it, which some of our folks didn't like the name, but I said, don't worry, it's Phil's. It's his name. But the infotronics era is going to be the most fundamental and highest growth rate in the history of the world. We've just got to get ourselves ready, and comparing ourselves with the rest isn't going to do it. We need to compare ourselves with the best. I don't know whether, I'm pretty sure it is human factors. Let's work on that then. One more. Phil's got his hand up. Phil, is it got a question mark at the end, or is it a statement?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm just glad I'm not following you as a speaker today. Thank you very much for that. I only found out a couple of days ago when asked how important is government in our GDP. And to my surprise, I found that of the $3.5 trillion of capital investment in land, buildings, equipment, etc. across Australia, 40% of it's government investment and 60% of it's private. But the more disturbing factor was that the return on those assets by government is 2% a year, which is 1/4 of what the private sector gets out of their investment. So you've got a very low yielding use of assets by government. Equally damning is that the productivity, which as you said has been pretty poor for Australia, was negative for that 40% of the economy compared to a positive contribution from the private sector. My concern is that most of those government sectors anyway are up in that transformational era, education, health, public administration. So we've got 40% of our assets that lazy and that non-productive. How do you see that challenge being picked up by government with fast broadband and the digital age compared to the private sector challenge?
I think, Phil, it's as usual, a brilliant question. How do I see government taking the challenge? I think the fiscal challenge that we have is the impetus for it. It's the equivalent of competition in the private sector, in my view. I may be oversimplified, but that's it. So I think that's the challenge. And what I would like to see, I've got to say, is I would like to see, firstly, a realisation that that's what it is, and then secondly, a decision-making that says, rather than, in fiscal constraint, what we'll do is we'll just chop every department by 10%. In every aspect of the agency to business, we'll restrict spending by 10%. That's the same as the bank or the insurance company doing the same. We'll just restrict all the spending by 10%. And realistically, while that'll stop the spending, does that improve the productivity? Maybe not. If we open the aperture and say, there's some parts that probably should be down by 50%, and the way to do that is to spend 10% more, say, in digitally enabling the services and the productivity that really should be there. I think that's the realisation we've got to get to. And I think the fiscal challenge, the only thing I've got to hang my hat on this, Phil, is the fiscal challenge has to be big enough to say, we're not going to cut our way out of this, we need to transform our way out of it. And that's what's been going on in the private sector since Adam Smith, possibly earlier.
Rod McDonald, City Councillor at Geelong. I think, just a quick comment on that last question, I think we're going through budgets at the moment, and that very issue has arisen. It's about pulling 100,000 out of the budget now, but what that results in maybe 2 or 3 years' time, it's blissful ignorance because people don't see it, it never appears, and so they don't know what they've lost. I suppose one of the things we're doing in Geelong is the message that you had here today about getting online now. We have a lot of small businesses that think it's something for the future when the NBN comes, or it's 5 years away, let's not worry about the digital era now. in attempting to reach those businesses, we've got a program that's being put in place. But I'd be really interested, Andrew, for just a couple of ideas, if there's anyone else from local government or for government, to some of the ways that we may help educate and steer our small businesses into the digital era. I'd just be interested for your thoughts.
It's a good question. One of the things we have been doing in the Smarter Cities area is working with local governments around the world, so with mayors and deputy mayors and councillors, to actually look at the role of transforming the operation of those responsible agencies and their operations towards a more sustainable and economically sound footing. So if we look at, and in fact I was at the Infrastructure Partnerships Australia dinner a few weeks ago when the National Infrastructure Project Awards were awarded. And against stiff competition, I've got to tell you, from the engineering and financial fraternity, IBM won the Smart Infrastructure Project of the Year for a project that we did in Townsville around smart water, which was to change the way Townsville is in the dry tropics. They have enough water, but they have a massive evaporation rate, so they need to change the way water is used. And there we introduced them to a range of people and technologies, and we won the National Smart Infrastructure, presented by Minister Albanese's department. And I must say, you should have seen the shock amongst the engineering fraternity saying, how come IBM's winning this award? This is meant to be for construction. Well, you know what? It isn't meant to be for construction. It's meant to be for applying intelligence and interconnectedness to get a better outcome. And that's what we did with the Townsville City Council. And so I would say, while it's good to be encouraging your local businesses and small, medium enterprises, my view would be lead the way in transforming your own stuff. What you do, how you deliver your services, and how you create and what value you provide to your citizens. That's what I do. I would lead that way and say, we're doing it ourselves. And you know what? The insight you'll get from that, the economic impact more widely that you will get in Geelong and surrounding areas from your own activity and the ecosystem that will provide, because my guess is you're a pretty significant employer in the economy down there. Therefore, if you get more people who really understand how this can get on, it will spread like wildfire. If you have a look at the economic impact in Ballarat of what we do in that tech park in the centre there's 300 million of economic impact that we and the Victorian government and the University of Ballarat that have actually got this wonderful facility that's going there. I think you could do that in Geelong, because we're doing it in Townsville, we're doing it in Geraldton, and soon we'll be doing it in a very important city in New Zealand. And so that's what I'd say. I'd lead the way with that, and that's it. How can we be transforming our public administration and safety activities, like customs, like defence, like policing, like health and ageing, and like so on. And again, Andrew's Minister Conroy has put out a very bold plan that went across government and established targets for improvements and in doing exactly what we said. And that's it. As Phil will tell you if you ask him, it's the biggest impact this nation will know is public administration and safety, because of that scale and that potential to do it. And the way to do it is not to try and encourage others to do it. I keep doing that, don't stop. But I would turn the gun on yourself. Do it yourself and lead the way and say, look what we've achieved. I'll bet you it's more efficient. I'll bet you it's more productive. And I bet the citizens say there's a better outcome. I'm absolutely confident. I think we've got time. We've got Masood. One more? One more. There it is. Over there.
Hi, Wayne Fitzsimmons. I'm the chairman of the PSC Foundation, whose role in life is really to promote the ICT industry. Just 2 comments, Andrew. I would point out that the federal government is funding through CSIRO the digital productivity flagship run by Ian Opperman, and they are totally focused on the areas that we're just talking about, and the gentleman from Geelong. Second thing is that the industry, and John Rich is on the committee organising what we call the Australia 3.0 Forum, the third time we'll be holding it this year, a global online debate on 4 topics. It's the Australian Computer Society, the Australian Information Industry and the PSC Foundation, together with CSIRO, NICTA, the Academy of Technological Sciences, Services Roundtable Australia, a whole lot of organisations, a public debate on lifting productivity through innovation. And the 4 topics this year are mining and agriculture in the natural resources area. The second one is infrastructure. The third one is health. And the fourth one is government services. And this is a public online debate. It's under the radar, but if any of you are interested in joining in, where we're trying to get thought leaders to come together and demonstrate that the ICT industry can stand up and be counted as serious players in driving productivity. Thank you.
Excellent, Wayne. Yeah, please, and I encourage everybody to do it. I think that's it. I'm standing up and being counted on this. I'd encourage you to do so. Please be part of it, because it's important for our nation and for our opportunity and for our prosperity. So thank you very much. And please, that's important.
Once again, thank you, Andrew, for that very intriguing presentation. On behalf of the ACS, we'd like to give you...
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.